At the end of the day, everything that's consumed is delivered by somebody. And if we can be in a situation whereby we have a supply chain which is efficient, dollars and cents are going to be saved right throughout the nation.
Essentially, our economy is dependent on freight. Our economy depends on freight moving efficiently to our ports, and our international competitiveness for our exporters is dependent on those supply chains.
Getting it right, will save the taxpayer money and also be good for the growth of Australia in the future.
Efficiency in this port is paramount because it actually translates to the price that you and I pay as individuals for purchasing goods, the price that businesses pay for purchasing goods.
I think a national freight and supply chain strategy is critical for Australia because we have too many examples over time, and even now, where we spend a lot of time and energy looking at different objectives state by state, and state by state priorities are not necessarily the same as national priorities.
We have to have a strategy which is going to make sure that we can deliver efficiently right throughout the country.
I think it's clear that the governments can work together to prioritise which networks need further funding, which networks don't, and really coordinate the investment and the planning of those future networks.
Because you've got such a diversity of players, there does need to be a common purpose and a common direction and a shared direction in that sense. So you do need to have strategies that people can identify as being opportunities in the future for investment purposes.
And we will reach full capacity with regards to domestic air freight capacity in Sydney within 3 years. It's critical that we commence discussions with government and community to see how we together can find solutions that will allow us to meet those capacity requirements until we see the opening of that second Sydney airport.
Look, planning is critical and it needs to be done to a far greater extent, and it needs to look at total supply chains, not just look at particular modes of transport or particular pieces of infrastructure. It really needs to look at that integrated network of roads, rail systems, warehouse precincts and ports.
We're very supportive of a 24-hour development of a Western Sydney airport, and we're very keen to work with government and community to make it a successful outcome for all.
We've got 960 stores across the country, and just over 400 of them have been applied a curfew by local councils, which restricts the operation of either the distribution centre or the access of the trucks into the stores.
Essentially what happens today is that industry works around bottlenecks, the inefficiencies in the system, and clearly there's great opportunity to make the existing infrastructure more efficient through better planning and investment, but also to look at future investment on priority projects for delivering more efficient freight.
I think the potential for freight to get crowded out in the metro areas is a very real risk here and now. And we're in a scenario where typically Australia's supply chains are principally regional. The very long haul, very long distances, but the productivity of those chains is significantly impacted by the nodes at each end.
Sydney is the key critical gateway into Australia, and it's vital that the airport infrastructure meets the requirements to enable us to support the Australian economy.
The RMS and the New South Wales Police have great alignment in their road safety task. They work collaboratively with the carriers, with industry itself, from an administrative point of view to boots on the ground. And I think that's an opportunity that could be looked at in other states as to how that model operates to the best effect.
We have national regulations that are conforming around the country and are the same. The cost to industry and the cost to individual businesses is way too high. We should not have operators on the road who are not prepared to conform to the regulations and provide a safe environment for everyone on the road. And they should be removed, and therefore I think an operator licence scheme of some description, whatever it may be, will deliver that in time.
It's not just about inland rail being a 1,700 kilometre corridor. It's got to be able to service new terminals that have got large warehousing precincts that allows freight to move from the train into warehousing, onto road to be delivered into various stores and distribution centres around the state.
We support more intermodal terminals, the ones that are planned, the ones that exist, they are all required in order to drive rail volumes from the port to those intermodals. And more will be required, but they very much have to have dedicated freight rail.
I think the issue is that we do have urban encroachment in our capital city ports. The infrastructure is already in those ports, and we need to look at ways of maximising volume through that existing infrastructure and the networks to and from both the ports, both road and rail.
My view on telematics is very simple, and that is I have not got a truck or a company ute on the road in Australia or New Zealand without telematics. I'm a great believer in it. I don't believe you can comply to the regulations today without telematics.
The bucket is only so deep, and I think if governments have got the courage to be able to identify exactly where we're going to get the best return for our investment, that's what the view should be.
For long-term freight solutions for the country, we need to be thinking about what are the infrastructure pricing mechanisms that are going to drive efficiency, transparency, but most importantly, the right freight finding the right mode for the national economic solution.
Now is the time
to get the supply chain right.
Now is the time
to get the supply chain right.
Now is the time
To get the supply chain right.
Now is the time
to get the supply chain right.